Well, hi everybody. My name is Father Alex. I'm the host of the Godcast. I'm also the vicar of St Matthew's Church in Burnley, and I'm the author of this book, Our Daily Bread, From Argos to the Altar, Priest Story, which is out now. You can get that on Amazon and Waterstones and all good bookshops. Brilliant guest today. Can't wait for you to watch and listen to this interview with Boff Whalley. Boff is a former member of the band Chumbawamba, and he is also a writer, and he is a playwright, and he is also an extraordinary fell runner. So we're going to be learning a bit more about Boff in this Godcast now. I do hope you enjoy it. If you do, please subscribe, please share it, and check out all the many other interviews that are on the site now. So do enjoy this interview now with Boff Whalley. Well, I'm delighted to say that joining me on the Godcast today is Boff Whalley. Boff is originates from Burnley. He's a playwright. He's a former member of Chumbawamba, and we're going to be find a little bit about him now. Boff, welcome to the Godcast. How you doing?
I'm good, thanks. Yeah, good to talk.
I just, I mean, this is just totally kind of colloquial Burnley stuff. I want to know about Burnley really, and a bit about where you grew up and what school you went to, and what were you listening to as a kid in the 70s?
Well, I grew up in I was born on Sand Street, which was I was there for about 7 or 8 years of my life, and that was one of the streets that got knocked down for the M65 to be built.
All right.
In Whittlefield. So it was brilliant. It was just with my mum for quite a while. My dad went, and my grandma and granddad lived about 2 or 3 doors down on the same street. So it was just, classic Burnley 1960s, 70s. But then we moved up to Plaintree Close up on at the top of near Manchester Road, Rosendale Road.
Yeah, well, I live on Rosen. Well, I don't want to give my address away really, but I live in that area. It's probably best to say. And
yeah,
yeah,
and it was great up there. Yeah.
And what were school days like for you? Were they good days?
Yeah, I enjoyed school in terms of like just having mates and kind of, learning what to do. I was obsessed with football and I wanted to play for Burnley. And my new dad that came along, he was the he was the manager of the Burnley youth town team. So when they had trials for the town team when I was 11, Burnley East versus Burnley West, at Cherry Fold on Cherry Fold playing fields, really muddy day. And I kind of just assumed that he would pick me because I was his son, his new son. And he didn't pick me, so I didn't play for the town team, and it devastated me. It was kind of a big turning point. It was that point where you think, oh, perhaps I won't be a professional footballer after all.
So did you have it out with him, Boff?
You what?
Did you have it out with him?
I do remind him at least once a year.
And so, what school did you go to as a kid round these parts, Boff?
Well, I went to Whittlefield first, and then when we moved, I went to Lower House.
Yeah.
Because my dad was a teacher, primary school teacher at Cole Clough, so I wasn't allowed to go there. He was like, no way. So I went to Lower House, and then to Burnley Ivy Bank first.
Ivy Bank, yeah.
And then to Burnley Grammar School.
Brilliant. Well, we better widen this out a bit because I don't think
let's
my
go
audience,
international. Yeah,
it's like
let's bring in Padiham and Higher like that.
Yeah, let's bring in
Come
Padiham.
on, what's the one?
Well, I grew up in Worcester, so yeah. But anyway, so you weren't going to make it as a footballer, and what about music, Boff? What music were you listening to? Perhaps at high school.
I remember being a bit kind of bloody minded in that I before punk came along, I was listening to stuff like Frank Zappa and the Bonzo Dog Band and kind of humorous stuff and things like that. National Lampoon records, and just because I wanted to be a bit odd, a bit different from everybody else who seemed to be listening to Genesis and Emerson, Lake and Palmer and all that sort of thing. But then when punk came along, that was it. It just kind of blew everything else out the water. And I kind of found a new community that wasn't just people who lived on our street or people who were in my class. I discovered this big community of people that wanted to do things and wanted to start fanzines and musicians collectives and put gigs on and all sorts of make badges, and it was just like a kind of little mini revolution in East Lancs.
And
It's
what
great.
did that look like, Bob? Because I suppose if you broad brush it, people think punk rock, they think the Sex Pistols, but I'm a few years younger than you, and when I was at school in Nelson, I remember names like the Anti-Nowhere League, Alien, Sex Fiend, those kind of bands were
Yeah.
kind of in the ether. I didn't really know much about them, but what did it look like in terms of bands? What were you listening to?
Well, right at the beginning, I remember thinking right at the beginning, this is really interesting because it's not just the Clash and the Pistols. It's not just four men with guitars. So there were like things like there was Patrick Fitzgerald, who was like acoustic. There was John Cooper Clarke doing poetry. There were bands like the Slits and the Raincoats and X-Ray Specs, with really strong women involved. I didn't know about women in bands at that point. It was all about men and boys.
Mm.
And then suddenly there's these bands like the Slits, really in your face and challenging all the ideas you had about. And all the music's really different. There was kind of acoustic stuff, reggae stuff, loud punky stuff. So it was just a fascinating time. And so when we decided, me and a few mates decided we could be a band, even though none of us could play an instrument, we just kind of decided to be a band, found a name, and somebody gave us a gig. So we thought, right, well, we better think of something to do. But that kind of experimental, have a go attitude was right in the heart of it all. Otherwise, I would never have been a musician, because I just thought musicians were people that practiced in the bedrooms, since they were 12, and then and they play at Earl's Court and Wembley Stadium. So it was an incredibly creative and inspiring time.
So I'm interested to know you did go and learn an instrument. My dad, he's been dead a few years, but he was a self-taught pianist. Well, how did you go about that process, Boff?
We literally met round at Dan's house, Danbert's house on Rosendale Road, and there must have been about 7 or 8 of us who all decided we were going to be a band, and we said, right, well, who's going to play what? And someone, I can't remember, someone, Pete or Midge, someone said, well, I'll have a go at drums because my brother's got a kit, I could borrow that. And that's literally how we did it. And I was like, well, my mum's got this old Spanish guitar that honestly must have cost about £2.50. I hope my mum never hears this. She'll think I'm being really, because that was the brilliant thing that got me going. I just thought, right, I've got an acoustic guitar. And we turned up for a gig, having learnt a few songs. That was the other thing, is that suddenly I was like, oh, great. How do I write a song? I better start learning how to write a song. And I was always more of a songwriter than a musician. I remember getting on stage at the Nelson Railway Workers Club with a borrowed electric guitar and with the lead, a curly lead. And I said to somebody, well, what do I do with it? Where do I put it? Well, I plug it into the amp. And I looked at the amp and it just seemed to have loads of different holes and dials. And I said, which one? Somebody said, come here, give it here. And they plugged it in. And that's how much I knew about music when I got on a stage. And I quickly realized that I loved the organization of it and the songwriting. The playing guitar wasn't the big deal of it.
No. Did it take long to become half decent as a guitarist? Did you take to it quite quickly?
Yeah, fairly quickly. Yeah. Yeah. I think everything I learned in the first maybe a year, that's kind of about as far as I got. I never really improved after that.
And those songs you mentioned, had you written those songs, or had there been covers? Or
no, we that was another great thing about punk, is that it was like, if you're going to be in a band, you've got to write your own songs. So we didn't really know about the idea of doing covers. We just wrote an entire set of our own songs. And that's when I really kind of thought, I love this, because I'd grown up listening to stuff like the Beatles and Frank Zappa and all those elements went into it. Harmonies and melodies and stuff like that. I just thought, oh, this is great. I really enjoy doing this.
Can you remember what those first few songs were about, or what
Yeah, they were all like satirical and stupid and they were meant to be funny, but they weren't really. Yeah, they were just a bit bit silly and rubbish. Because we had our heroes were local band Not Sensibles, and Sage from Not Sensibles, I was like one of his best mates. And we used to go to Manchester to buy singles when there were only like probably 25 punk singles available. We'd get on the bus and go to Manchester. But I just looked at them. They started being in a band, and I thought, that looks great. I want to do that. So we really looked up to them, and they were silly and wrote silly, stupid songs. So we thought, oh, maybe that's what we should do then.
I'm just interested to know, Boff, because it is a Godcast, and people who watch this will recognise that I'm a priest. Was there any religion in your upbringing, and were you empathetic to it or apathetic?
I was brought up as a Mormon in a Mormon family, and all my, Burnley family, my mom and my sisters and everybody else, they're all still Mormons, and I think that from probably the age of maybe about 10 or 11, it started dawning on me that, because we used to go to church all the time, like twice on a Sundays and once on a Tuesday, and it was full time, proper full time, and they're all absolutely lovely people. I wouldn't say a word against them in terms of what lovely people they all are, at the Burnley church and everything. But from about age of about 11 or 12, I started thinking, well, actually, all this stuff that people are talking about, the still small voice inside you that speaks to you, or that, talks when that answers your prayers, nothing was happening. And I tried praying, and it's like, nope, that's not working. So I'll try, hoping for something, or nope, that didn't work. There was just nothing there. And every once a month they have a thing called fast and testimony meeting, where people get up and share their kind of testimony and their belief in God and the church and everything. And I used to sit there just a bit puzzled, because I just thought, there's nothing happening for me.
Yeah.
And then later on, when I discovered kind of politics and anarchism and stuff like that, but then later things like pantheism, which is basically this kind of belief in the spirituality of everything, people and nature and the world, everything living, and that we all share this planet, and it's our duty to kind of honor and look after each other and look after the planet. Then I kind of thought, okay, this is the kind of thing I like.
Was that sorry about the dog barking then, everyone, but
it's good. It's nice to have a dog keeping around. And
I was just wondering, Boff, about the conversation that you perhaps maybe had with your loved ones about that at some point, that maybe this is just not for me. Was that a difficult conversation, and was that respected, and does it remain a tension?
I never had the conversation. I lived in my family didn't really talk about things like that. I just kind of stopped going.
Yeah.
And it became kind of recognized that I wasn't going to church, and that, the things I was getting into to do with, music and the kind of lifestyle thing didn't fit with Mormonism. So, and my mum, especially my mum, because she's the kind of matriarch, and she was the first one. She'd been converted. She's always been absolutely brilliant. She always just treated me as, well, I'm her son. So, and one of the things about Christianity that kind of troubles me a bit is that really good people, lovely people who are practicing Christians, can sometimes believe that it's the belief in Christ that makes you care, that gives you empathy, and that makes you want to, look after people. Whereas I think you can do that without religion. And that, and I think my mum recognised that. She recognised I wasn't going to go off and just do loads of drugs and beat people up. And do you know what I mean? She knew that I had a good head on my shoulders, and that I cared about things. And so we have a brilliant relationship now. It's great.
Well, I can only agree with you. I definitely don't think you can only do good things by being a Christian. And I think I know loads of people that do wonderful things who've never even been in a church. So I certainly wouldn't critique you for that view. And as you're growing up, Boff, you've picked up the instrument, you're singing the songs. Do you decide at this point this is the career that you want to have? What's going on in in a young Boff Whalley's mind?
It was never a career. That word was a dirty word.
Yeah.
So it started out as the first band was just a laugh. And then when we started Chumbawamba, we'd been busking for 2 summers in Paris, like trying to make money playing outside and at that point we thought, let's really take this seriously. But that didn't mean a career. That meant really practicing and rehearsing and learning how to write songs and trying to get gigs and all that sort of thing. And I still think that the highlight of all that time I spent in a band was we made our first single. We kind of paid for it ourselves and everything, and we put it out ourselves on our own label, and we sent one to John Peel. And when John Peel played it, it was like, this is it. This validates everything I've done in my life up to this point. John Peel's playing our record, and then he played it again and then again and again, and I just thought, this is great. This is what I want to do. At the same time, we all had part-time jobs. You know, I'd worked at the post office and in shops and all sorts of things.
And you went over to Leeds. What was the pull to Leeds? Was it studies or?
What it was is that I got a job at the post office in Burnley, and it only lasted about 3 months. And one of the foremen on the shop floor at the post office, he came in and he said, because my granddad had been a postman all his life. He said, "Oh, you know, I know your granddad George was a great postman, and you know, there's a real career in this if you stick to it. And we're thinking that you've obviously like got a bit of brains, so we're thinking we're going to put you in the dead letter office. And what you're doing there, you just basically go through all the mail that's badly addressed and find out if you can find where it should get sent to." And he said, if you can do a year in the dead letter office, then we'll move you up, and it's like a career path. And the thought horrified me, because I thought all I wanted to do was have a sack full of letters and walk around the streets. And so I desperately looking around for something else to do. And Danbert got in at Leeds University to study something. I can't remember what he was studying. And he said, "Oh, if you went to clearing, they might let you in." So I just went through clearing, and literally within about a month, I was off to Leeds. And all I knew about Leeds was that, you know, Gang of Four and Mekons, you know, bands that I liked that come from there.
And what's going on politically at this stage in your life? I mean, I want to, before we finish this, I want to talk about the work you're doing with Red Letter and the show that's going out there, We're Not Going Back. But politically, I mean, I've talked to loads of politicians on the Godcast. I always think about my first political recollections was definitely the miners' strike, you know, around the 80s. I was a young kid, but it was always on the news. What was it for you? Because again, you're a little bit older than me. What was stimulating your mind politically?
Well, for the first thing was bands. So I think the situation I grew up in and where I was like kind of racist, casually racist and homophobic. It was just, that's what I was, just a, you know, young white Burnley kid who didn't know any better. And then Rock Against Racism came along right at the beginning of quite quickly during punk. And that taught me a lesson. That made me grow up and think, okay. And then Tom Robinson brought out Glad to Be Gay. So at first I was like, you know, so, you know, this punk rock group, they brought out this thing, and literally within 6 or 8 weeks, I was like, what am I thinking? All the cool people know that it's not cool to be a homophobic idiot and racist. And I had a mate, Nadeem, from Burnley Grammar School. He was like one of only 3 or 4 Asian lads in the school. And he was brilliant. He was such an influential, clever, funny lad. And I just thought, I want to be his mate. He's brilliant. And that's why we started the band with him. And I grew up politically quite quickly after that. And then it was the Falklands War was a big thing. And then, as you said, the miners' strike. I was kind of a pacifist for a short while, but then the miners' strike taught me not to be. I thought, no, I think that if this is about, sorry, this is little Betty, she's making a lot of noise. Yeah, that just made me kind of really think about politics and look into it more and do a lot of reading, and got involved in peace camps and demonstrations and all that sort of thing, going down to the CND marches in London and all that sort of thing.
Have you, again, we're talking to politicians. I've had numerous politicians from the left of the Labour Party. Has your political thinking changed much over the years? Or is it still very much core to those roots of, kind of, the left of centre, as it were?
Yeah, very left of centre. It's hard to say left of centre now because because that political ground has shifted so much that people who can call themselves left of centre, who I think are just complete centrists.
Yeah.
And without kind of being really judgmental about things, I think that when I first learned about anarchism and started reading about what it was, and this whole idea of not following political parties and trying to create your own communities and all that sort of thing, there's nothing happened in terms of parliamentary politics and party politics that has altered my ideas on all that. And in fact, if anything, they've in the last 10 years, I've become even more hardened against obviously against the Tory parties and everything, but the Labour Party. I think the treatment of Jeremy Corbyn kind of was for a lot of young people, that was a bit of hope in somebody that was trying to say something, with a bit of spirit. And like yesterday they announced that we have finally gone over the 1.5 degree environmental disaster threshold on the same day that Keir Starmer announced that they were cutting back the budget on their green plan. And it just makes me, not calling for a ceasefire in Gaza. I just don't understand how anyone who calls themselves on the left could not want a ceasefire with so many thousands of children being killed. And there are things like that in the news every day that just keep me, thinking about politics. Yeah.
Why do you think the Labour Party has become that, Boff? Do you think it's because they recognise it's possibly the only way they'll get into power?
Yeah, I think that's possibly true, and that's a sad indictment of politics. If it's all about, how do we get into power, rather than what do we believe in, what do we really believe in, and what do we want to try and pass on to people and to young people, and what do we want to, do we just want to follow what we think the popular? I mean, that's the problem with populism. If you believe that, you end up with Donald Trump.
Yeah.
And nobody wants that.
Yeah. No, yeah, no, absolutely, yeah. I mean, if people are interested, there's some interviews on the Godcast. One's with John McDonnell, another one is with David Osland, and Richard Bergen is following you, Boff, next up on the Godcast.
All right, say hello to Richard.
Yeah, well, he's in your neck of the woods, isn't he?
He is, yeah. I've met him a couple of times. Yeah.
Yeah.
And he has stuck his neck out and called for a ceasefire repeatedly, even though he's been told by the Labour, Apparatchiks he has to stop. So respect to him.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people. I mean, I feel kind of politically bereft, really. I mean, probably because of the work I've been doing in the circumstances in and around Stoops and Griffin Estate and Burnley, and I don't think any political party is addressing that anymore. But let's move on, because we've had 25 minutes, and I just feel like I talked to you all afternoon. But and so Chumbawamba comes along, and you build up quite a steady following, don't you? Just tell us about those early successes of the band.
Well, when we had a hit with Tubthumping, and what everybody was asking us was like, oh, what's it feel like to have been in a band for like 15 years and then suddenly, get successful? And we always said, no, the way we measured success was just being able to spend your life with a bunch of people that you work with and that you love, and that you can do something creative with people that you love for that long and still, and not fall out, was just a brilliant thing. So, like we ended up touring everywhere, doing like 5 or 6 week tours of Germany and Switzerland and America and stuff, long before Tubthumping. And those were brilliant times. Just, how we managed it and how we worked out how to do that and still really enjoy it and enjoy each other's company and all that sort of thing. We also had a thing where right from the beginning we said, let's not just stick to playing one kind of music. So if we do a couple of albums and we'd kind of go, yeah, we've kind of got a style there. Let's do something totally different. Let's make an a cappella folk album. And then a couple of years later, we'd go, yeah, let's do something with loads of dance beats on it. Let's get remixes in and stuff.
Yeah.
It was just always like a challenge. And so what would happen is that we'd had a hardcore audience, but then we would lose a lot of our audience whenever we changed and did something else. And then we'd start again with a different audience. And that was great. Always a challenge, always interesting.
Yeah, and Tubthumping was stratospheric, wasn't it? It was just extraordinary. And was that an easy thing to deal with? Did you embrace it? And how do you reflect on it now, Boff? Is it a joy or is it an Achilles heel? You know, does it frustrate you that for some people it might be the song that defines you? What's your thoughts on it all?
Yeah, I think if people just know that one song, and then that's great. That's good enough for me. In fact, most people don't know who did the song. They just know that Get Knocked Down song. And I love that. It's almost like it's a folk song. It doesn't belong to, I don't think, oh, I have ownership of that song. I just think that's great. It belongs to everyone. And the first time I heard it being played at Turf Moor, I was in the toilet. I was having a pre-match piss, and it came over the tannoy, and I just felt so proud. I just thought, this is great. And it's become one of those kind of football songs. And and I love that.
Yeah.
It's great. And I went to see a Yard Act in Leeds about
yeah. I've seen
3 or 4 months ago. Yeah, brilliant band, great
Excellent.
band.
Yeah.
They came back on for the encore. They had Phil Jupitus there with them. They came back on for the encore and did Tubthumping, and I just thought, this is great. This is lovely. They weren't doing it because I was in the room. They were doing it because they thought, hey, this is a great party song. Why not do this for an encore? And everybody jumps up and down and has a really good time. So I just feel really proud of it.
Did you know it was going to be the song it became, Boff? I mean, it's like, we've got the full range, got kids, grown-ups, grandparents, they all know Tubthumping. It is that song, and it's timeless as well, isn't it?
Yeah. I love that it's like that. We still get letters from people saying, we played it at the wedding, or we played it, at such and such an occasion, or a lot of people use it when people are ill and sick, and they use that song, literally playing the song whilst operations are going on. And I just think, brilliant. That's a good thing about music. If music can be used for that, then great.
Yeah. And what about the end of Chumbawamba, Boff? I don't know if you know Ian McNabb from the High School Works. He was a guest on the Godcast a few weeks back, and
Right.
You've got to ask these questions. Why did the High School Works split up? And he was quite emotional about it, actually, and it clearly still causes him a lot of pain. I don't know, what is it? Probably 30 years since the High School Works run thing.
Wow.
How did it come about with you, and what's it like? Do you miss it? Do you crave for it?
No, I really don't miss it at all. I think because it went on for so long, and I think that eventually we had a meeting where we said, let's just do one more year and really enjoy it, and just do gigs in places that we really want to go to and visit, and then we'll stop, and we'll have a big gig at the end. We'll play in Leeds, and everybody that had been in the band before can come along and play, and so it was really it was quite a kind of dignified exit, really. And I'm really glad that we don't kind of think, oh, I'm getting bored now, can we get back together? Yeah. I just think, no, it was a chance for everybody to go off and do other things and find other things to do.
Did you know what you were going to do, or did you take time out? How did it fall?
Well, I'd already been writing quite a lot, and like me and Alice had always been kind of writers to a certain extent, and I just started thinking, right, I can put a lot more effort into that. And because I'd done a lot of the in terms of the kind of songwriting and record production, I'd been involved in all that all the way through, so it was natural for me to carry on making music and writing, and so I just kind of went straight into that.
And now you're a playwright, you're a distinguished writer. Tell us about your connection with Red Ladder and how that came about.
I wrote a musical which was based in the area that I was living at the time in West Leeds called Armley. So I wrote a musical that was about Armley, about growing up there and everything. And somebody that was in it was worked for Red Ladder. Rod worked for Red Ladder, and he liked it. And he just said, do you do any other things like that? We'd actually had a couple of drinks in the pub after the show when it got to this point where he kind of went, well, why don't you write something for us? And I thought, oh, that's interesting, something proper that's going to tour. So I tried doing it and I just thought, this is great. I really enjoy it. And I get to, it's finding a different way of expressing ideas about politics and about the world. And I still get to put music in it. So it was great. And I love working with theatre because you do this thing, you write this big thing and then you give it to somebody else and they make it better. Actors are fantastic.
Yeah.
And certain, and directors and, they come up with ideas that what they can do with your words. And I just really respect that and love it.
Yeah. So tell people about is it a musical? We're Not Going.
Yeah, We're Not Going Back is one that I wrote 10 years ago as a commemoration of the miners' strike. So now it's a 10-year anniversary, and Unite the Union have come back and said, we want to tour it again. So that's happening again. And then I've got another one called Sanctuary, which is going to be on at the end of the year, which will be set in churches, actually, which was about somebody seeking, it's about an asylum seeker from Iran seeking refuge in a church, and all the kind of social and political fallout that comes with that, in terms of, arguments between the people who are in the church, the people who work in the church, the priests, etc., and the higher ups in the church, the archbishop, archdeacons, etc., who don't have as laissez-faire attitude to us and think, well, we don't want to break the law. So it's this about the conversation that you can have about what is refuge, what is sanctuary, how far should you break the law in order to offer somebody refuge who really needs it, who's going to be deported. And it's set in a church so that when you're in the audience, you go in and you are in a church and there's an altar and an organ and all that sort of thing.
Well, do you know what? If you need a venue, you'd be brilliant for you to bring it to my church at St Matthew's. It'd be fabulous. It's a wonderful setting.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, I'll keep that in mind.
Because we've done a few comedy gigs and it's a really lovely venue, and
yeah,
it'd be lovely to bring the boy from Burnley back.
Yeah, I'd love to do that.
That would be fabulous. And what about you just mentioned Yard Act, who I went to Tramlines a few years back and discovered them on the I think it was the introducing stage. Fabulous band, and actually there was a lot of kind of big names. I found myself in the smaller venues and the tents and whatnot, discovering these incredible young bands.
Yeah.
Are you still driven by listening to new music, and anything you'd like to recommend to the watcher or listen?
Yeah, I do. I still find new things and get excited about them. I went to see a band about 3 or 4 weeks ago. They were one of the best things I've ever seen in my life. They were called, it's French, so I can't remember all the name, but it's basically Orchestre du Champ. They're from France. There's about 11 of them on stage with like marimbas and brass, and they're just playing in a tiny kind of ex-squat venue in Leeds, and they just blew the place apart. They were just absolutely fantastic. And I love the idea that I can still, even at my age and even after all these years, I can still be absolutely shocked and excited by music. I saw Anna Meredith, who's about 2 years ago. I think she did the Scottish Symphony Orchestra for a while. She ran it, and she does a show where it's just this crazy kind of Philip Glass, harsh, mad music that's made with synthesizer and everything, but with orchestral pieces as well, with like cellos and tuba. And again, walking into a room and seeing somebody do something that you've not experienced before is just such a thrill. I love it.
Yeah, I do too. I'm currently on a quest to just find new songs, trying to not, because I'm one of these that gets quite nostalgic and go back to madness and the school discos and whatnot. And
yeah.
At the moment, I am on a real quest to find some new music, and there is some fabulous stuff out there. So, well, Boff, I'll tell you what I wanted to ask you about is you fell running? Because I mean, I often go up Pendle and I see these nutters running up and down. I'm thinking, who are these people? And now I'm looking at one. I
Yeah.
mean, where did this love? Is this something you've always had, or?
No, no, I just went to watch a race towards the end of the 1980s, around about 1990. And my dad said, "Oh, there's this thing, fell running, and they do these races. Do you want to come and watch one? Because they do it up at, at Thieveley Pike, up north."
Yeah, Tomeden Way.
And so I went to watch a race, and I just thought the best thing about it that I thought was it wasn't like these athletic, beautiful, fantastic bodies. It wasn't Steve Cram and Sebastian Coe. It was like people all shapes and sizes, and men and women in the same race, little uns and big uns, and even people who get to the end and like get a cigarette out and start smoking. I just thought, this is the sport for me. I want to have a go at that. And I just did it once or twice, and I just thought, I love this.
With a bit of success.
Yeah, eventually, yeah. And within a couple of years, I was like, I was absolutely obsessed. I was running all the time, and yeah, and I was doing okay. And I was part of a team, Pudsey and Bramley, who kind of won the British Championship and ran all over the place. Yeah.
Fabulous. Well, Boff, I've loved chatting to you, and I hope everybody's enjoyed seeing you, listening to what you've got to say. People like musicians. There's had some fabulous guests on. Spider Stacey from the Pogues. It's been
I listened to a bit of it. That was good.
Yeah, Ian.
I listened to the Milltime Brothers.
Yeah, I'm going to say Simon Nelson.
Yeah, that was great. Yeah.
And Lone Lady is a female artist. If anybody's not listened to, I really recommend people checking her out. She's fabulous from Manchester, and there's lots of politicians, not all from the left. There's some from the right as well. So, Boff, thanks so much for your time. Maybe see you on the turf in the next few weeks in our struggles against relegation.
Yeah, I can't let it go. We'll have a great season next season. It'll be all right.
Yeah, we'll be right. It'll be right, as we say in Burnley.
Yeah.
Boff, thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks very much. I appreciate that.
God bless you. See you.
Thanks a lot. See you. Bye.